guys, it's Gilly Hunt here with my A to Z guide to Stampin' Up products, and I'm on the letter P for punches. And before I start, I'm hoping that this looks much more improved to you than my previous A to Zs. I'm told by Yolanda that she was getting black sides to her images, and I've worked out that I was filming in a square format, which was giving you sort of black edges and not a full screen. So I'm hoping that I've now learnt my lesson and that I'm in landscape. I'm learning something new every day. It's a marvel. I know loads and loads about crafting, but not so much about technology, but fingers crossed. I'm learning, and hopefully you will have a better experience with P for punches. So here goes. Let's take these away and let's get started. I want to show you, first of all, the difference in sizes between some of the Stampin' Up punches. Sorry, I said stamps, didn't I? There are quite some differences. We have some little tiny weeny ones sometimes. Different catalogues have different punches. So we have little teeny weeny ones, and we have medium-sized ones, and some really huge, almost hand-sized ones, which are really quite heavy to hold, quite difficult to hang on to. But it's not a problem, and I'll show you in a moment why. So don't panic if you're thinking, blimey, that's so big I can't manage it. Especially for those of you with some dexterity problems, it's easy peasy with these. So let's get started. Lots of different sizes then, and also some which have multiple images and some which just have the one image to cut. So heavy, great chunky pieces of metal mean that we get a magnificent punch. We get real, solid, sharp, clear, crisp images. But these would be huge. Let me show you how huge. If we had them out as a full punch all the time. Here we go. Right, now that's really difficult. I've got little tiny hands, and I'm going to show you how easy it is. Because actually all of these are designed with a flat area here. What looks like the top of the punch, which is where the image is, and where there's an image also on the side. I'll show you why in a moment. What looks like the top is actually where you want to put it onto the table. So you want that to be the bottom of the punch, because you want this area here, which is has the big circle, so that you can see where the blades are and where the cut is going to be made. That way, when you're putting your materials in, it makes it easier. So let me just show you. We feed the card in through the slot here. Okay, so there's your sideways view, there's your V shape of your punch, and it's this piece here. We slot it in, and can you see I can watch it going in, and I can decide exactly where I want to punch. And then all I need to do is using the flat of my hand, and I'm not using a lot of pressure. I just brought my second hand up because it's a habit that I have, I think, more than anything else. And look how beautifully crisp and smart. Let me get it under there for you. There is not a jagged edge, there's not a fray, there's not a single anything there. It's beautifully clean and crisp and clear. And I didn't have to put a lot of pressure on to get that to punch. Let me just do another one. Right, I've got my flat of my hand, but because it's the flat of my hand, I can just press. So I'm not having to squeeze and push and do all the things that other people with other stamps have to do. So beautiful, heavy, the punch itself helps you punch down. Two lovely little pieces of foliage there, beautifully punched out and really crisp. Okay, so that's how you punch with them. Now, the other thing is, if they were all big and wide like this, they would take up a lot of room in your craft room. So there is, when I close it, the ability to shut your stamp and close it, and it locks. So let me just show you that on the slightly smaller one because it's easier just to hold it up for you. What happens is this is the lock mechanism, and it closes the blade, so instead of being like a punch shape, it becomes a long thin shape. Watch, I'm going to first of all hold the punch itself. Now again, I could do that by pressing down like that on the desk, or I could do it by putting my hand around it, and then I'm going to click. Okay, and then I'm going to let go. Now, why am I saying to hold it closed? Well, and then click. Okay, hold it closed, then click. Now, the reason is this piece here is plastic. Can you see it going up and down? That little plastic lug there. That's what does the locking. And it's good, and it's sturdy, and it's solid. But inside there is also a spring. Can you see right at the back there? Oops, I'll try and point it out. There it is. And that spring is just desperate to open up this punch and give it a real woof. Now, the problem is if you are trying to get a piece of plastic to click, the spring is metal and everything else about this punch is solid metal. So it's fighting that plastic, and it's best to hold it together because that way those lugs have got a chance of opening fully before it springs open. If it starts to spring open when it's only partly across, then there's a possibility that you can snap off one of those lugs. Okay, so close it fully, then clip. Okay, so that's the storage lock. That's the glory of these. The other glory of these is that now that you've locked it nice and tight, and it doesn't take up so much room, there's another great advantage in the design. Stampin' Up is so clever, they do think things through. This is a slightly raised circle. There's just a little tiny lip. Can you see there? A little tiny lipped edge, which also means that if you have another stamp, this circle at the bottom, which is where we look to see where the stamp is going to be, that the punch is going to be, I keep saying stamp, don't I? I'm very sorry. You'll have to, when I say stamp, I probably mean punch. This circle will fit on top. Okay? As will the next one. This circle will fit onto that circle. And so on, until I have a really tall stack. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the really big punches there. And look what happens if I hit them. I can hit them quite hard and they'll still stay nicely stacked up and neat. There they are from the side. That's how they stack neatly. So those can be stacked neatly on your shelf, totally safely and totally without wobbling over, without falling, without any problems. Let me just put them all over to one side. So that's the advantage of the locks. What are we going to do with our punches now? Well, I have got for you today lots and lots of samples to show you and a few little bits to show you how they work. And I've got 20, Jill's top 20 ideas for punches. So I'm going to pop that there. It will probably mean absolutely nothing to you at this point in time. But by the time we've finished, you'll understand what each of those 20 things are. So now is your chance to pause your video, take a note of them, take a photo, take a screenshot, so that when you go back to it, you'll remember these are 20 things I can do with my punches. Okay? So let's start first though, before we start doing anything with our punches, working out what we can punch. So here is what we can punch. Standard Whisper White and Very Vanilla cardstock, easy peasy. Thick Whisper White and very vanilla cardstock. Easy peasy. Shimmer, easy peasy. Watercolour, easy peasy. Shall we not have the peasy in future? Stampin' Up cardstock, easy. Designer series papers, easy. Even thick, heavily foiled papers, which are almost like a cardboard, easy. Vellum, piece of cake. Foils, wonderful. All our foils are lovely coloured foils. Glimmer paper, easy, but I have put a little star here. And there's something special about glitter paper that you need to know. And I'm going to just bring in a piece of glitter and a piece of foil because we're going to just talk about those for a second. All of the others, punch away, easy peasy. When you've got glitter, I want to show you how this punch works. So inside here at the bottom is, let me just hold it up, is a quite sharp-ish. Can you see the edge of that blade coming up? It's not sharp in that I can certainly put my finger on it. I'm not going to do myself any harm. You know, you're not going to have to worry about the children or anything like that. So there it is, and it raises up and it forces the card through between the metal. That's how a punch works. Okay? And that's why it needs to be really strong. Now, if you are using foil paper, first and foremost, you want the foil to stay attached to the card because all foils are sort of laminated. There's the card at the base and then the foil is stuck to it. So you want the punch itself, which is at the bottom, to push, if anything, the foil onto the paper. You don't want it to push the paper and then push the foil off. Now, for most things, I have to say, you can do this both ways. But the best way to do it is to put it foil side down, and that then pushes the foil onto the paper. And you get a very nice finish, okay? Now, more important than that, so foil goes with the white facing you and with the foil at the bottom. Now, thinking about the same process, the glimmer paper goes the other way round. It goes in with the glitter facing you. Now, the reason for that is that as the piece at the base pushes up and through, any of these little bits of grit get pushed out and away from the punch mechanism. So watch. Whee. Okay, here you can see, in fact you can see some of the little gritty bits got flicked out. Now that's helpful because what we don't want are those nasty little gritty bits getting caught into the punch itself, because they will over time start to eat away and make little dents and hollows. Not straight away, you can certainly do quite a lot of work with this before that starts to happen. But if you put it that way up, you won't have any problems because it will be pushing the glitter and the glimmer granules out of the way. Okay, so glitter and glimmer face up, foils face down. That's all you need to know, okay? And also the same with the foils. If you have a particular designer paper and you know which surface you want, it gives a very slightly more rounded edge. So it's better to put the side that you want to cut facing downwards, so that as it presses up, it slightly rounds it and it gives you a nicer finish. Okay, but that's really not vital. The most vital thing is this glimmer. We don't want to be getting these chunks of glimmer into the mechanism. Okay, now there are also a few other things that we don't want getting into the mechanism. So I would say to you, if you can, avoid any adhesive backed paper, or any fabrics or anything that's handmade that has big chunky pieces like seeds or things like that, because they will get caught into the mechanism and we don't want this jamming. Okay, now if it does jam, which it might do, you might sort of do something silly, or you might just get a piece caught on the edge. If it does jam, there's 2 or 3 things to remember. First port of call, don't pull it out, because then you end up with a little piece stuck inside that you can't get at. So the first port of call is, if you can, chop, 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 and chop again. And then give it a tap sideways and see if anything falls out. Chop, 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 and get anything out. And that way, anything that's got jammed might just get mushed up enough to fall away. If, however, this has got stuck solid and you can't chop it, then I'm going to tell you to do something quite drastic. On a suitable surface, so not something that's either going to be broken by your punch or that's going to break the punch itself, on a suitable surface, like for example a carpeted floor, just give it a few sharp taps, and that might just release any springs or any tension that's got caught in the jam. And last resort, stick it in your freezer. Overnight in the freezer, or even just an hour or so in the freezer, means that the metal will start to contract. And in contracting and shrinking, it will give a little bit of a gap around the edges for whatever it is that's got stuck to manage to get its way out. So that's what I would suggest if you have a jam. You won't have jams, these are such good quality. It's a real rarity that happens, but it's best to know rather than to struggle with it straight away. And 2 more things just to know. If you have had to put it in the freezer, or if you've left it in conditions that aren't really perfect, you can recondition this a little bit by putting a piece of waxy kitchen paper through it and just giving it a few cuts, which just waxes the edge of the blade, and that just gives it a smoothness, so any roughness or any stickiness goes away. And every now and then I always recommend that you just sharpen your blade a little. All you do is take some aluminium foil, ordinary kitchen paper, fold it up, I've got this about 5 or 6 thick, and you pop it in and you just give it a few chomp away. Okay, just give it a few chomps, and 4 or 5 goes through like that will just help to sharpen up the blade. And I do that to mine maybe once a year, and I use mine a lot in classes, so it's not something you have to do often, but it is, if you start to get any little rough raggedy taggedy edges, then that's your solution. Okay, hope that helps you. So let's get started on my 20 things to do with a punch. Let's start with a piece of black paper. Let's stick her in, and here we have, you can almost hear that crunch, crunch. It almost does a little double crunch. Let's have a little cat. Shall we do another one? Show you how to do it again. Okay. Because I want to show you that, remember, when you're doing punches, you can always turn them around. So you now have, oh, that's not very good, that's too dark. Hang on, let's have a piece of white to pop it on. There we go, here's our pussycats. Aren't they lovely, crisp, clean images? And there's our cats. Now, what can we do with those? Now we've got two cats. Well, we could always make ourselves a really nice little card. Oh, I've got another cat there. They're coming at me from all angles. There we go. Oh, I've got another one here as well. We've got a cat family. Yay! Wishing you every happiness this special day will bring. A nice one for a lucky. Wishing you happiness, wishing you a good day. Great black cat. simple silhouettes. So simple silhouettes is my number one. And don't forget, a silhouette doesn't have to be black. So now we've done the cats, we better sort of level things up and do the dogs. So a silhouette can be a white silhouette. So here's my silhouette of the dog with his little heart and a little boat, because I now have a new little grand puppy, Whippet, which my daughter has just got a new puppy, and so I feel like I'm her grandma. So this is in my little treat box for her. Okay, so that's number one. We can do things with silhouettes. Number two, we can take a punch and we can just simply, really simply, cut out an image out of coloured designer papers. So here's some simple papers from, in fact, the country set, from the golf set. I was wanting to use it up because we're now coming up to the new catalogue launch and I want to get some new designer papers. So I'm using up my old ones and I send lots and lots of Christmas cards. How simple is that? Happy Christmas, punched image, one little glitter. And it means I can send out a whole load of these to lots and lots of people without taking up every last waking minute making cards. Aren't they lovely? So the second thing is use it to cut out really nice designer series paper. Third thing, use them to coordinate and cut our stamp sets. Now this is the fabulous thing about Stampin' Up. We have stamp sets which are designed specifically to go with the punches. So this Daisy Lane stamp set, let's give you a little cut here. I've lost my, there we go. Let's just do a quick stamp to show you. So here we go, let's stamp our daisy. I love this colour, this balmy blue, it's a fairly new colour. Been around a little while now, but it's still relatively new and I do love it, it's very pretty. Here we go, so hold it tight and unclick, then let go. And out, in through there. And now I'm going to try and hold on to this. And I want to tell you about the bite point. Now, the lovely thing with these stamps is, because they're so big and heavy and wonderful, they don't start cutting straight away. So you can hold it punched, but it will just hold in place. Okay, so I can now wiggle this about until I've got it where I want it. And now I can hold it, and that's really good and solid. So I can be double sure, I can just take my time and I can hold it on what we're calling the bite point before I actually crunch it. And I think that's correct. So I'm now going to just punch it, okay? And there we go. Isn't that nice, neat and smart? And I would take forever and a day to cut that out as neatly as that with a pair of scissors. Even our wonderful snips. So that's the third thing you can do. You can look for coordinating punches and stamp sets, and you can stamp an image and punch an image. And then once you've done that, you can make really beautiful, professional looking tags and pieces of artwork like that. Isn't that lovely? Okay, number 3, you can make what I'm going to call graphic design cards. Really lovely punchy graphic cards, because when you're punching everything comes out exactly the same size and shape. There's no slight variations. It means you can get lovely bold images. So the next thing I'm going to have on my list is repetition for graphic images. And these have been stamped and then punched. These are just coloured pieces of card that's been punched. Okay, So next one is number 5, which is to add decorative details. So here I have some lovely details from stamp sets, stamped out, coloured in and what have you, and I've used my punch that I showed you in fact at the very beginning, didn't I? This ferny one just gives me some lovely little details, and again they're details that would take forever and a day to cut out manually, but if I bring it across, here it is, here's the stamp, the punch that I've used. There it is, one of those in 1 second. So how easy is that to get 3 lovely pieces of really ferny, nice decorative background. So there's the next one. So we're going to go on to number 6, which is to create text labels. I think these are really lovely to do because certainly when you're a beginner, one of the hardest things ever is to get your text nice and neat and straight. If you are trying to do that and you then mess up your image, it's a pain in the neck. So what I tend to do is I get a little small piece of scrap card. I first of all do the stamping, and then I can position my labels to fit whatever slant I've put on. I can adjust until I get it just right, and then clunk, and now it looks like I've got it perfectly flat and perfectly straight. So think about that when you're doing labels. So for pretty little bags, here's our label. For just an ordinary card, here's my label. Lovely and professional. So think about labels. Now once we're into the world of labels, how about taking your labels and folding them over? So what about using them as little mini note within a note? So here's our lovely note card, which I don't know what I'm going to write inside, but it says thank you, and maybe I'm just going to put a little tiny detail of my thanks in there. Okay, so how about mini messages by folding over the label at some point, maybe putting it onto the string like I have here, or just popping it in a corner. Okay, little mini notes within notes. How about that for an idea? Okay, the next thing is, how about making it a 3D decoration? And we're up to number 8, and this is simply done by putting together circles. And if you keep an eye on my various YouTubes, closer to Christmas I'm going to show you how to make this, but I'm just going to say to you, all we're doing is punching and we're sticking together, but you can make lovely 3-dimensional objects, so don't just think in 2 dimensions. Okay, what about once we've started to use our label punches, and we have some lovely label punches. I've used this label punch here, this one here. Let's just try, it's very shiny. Okay, this label punch here to punch out a window. So what about using your punches for windows? You could have a cat-shaped window, you could have a label-shaped window, you could have stars and butterflies, all sorts of different shaped windows. And then on this one, I've actually used the stamp set to just feather the edge a little bit, so it's not so obvious that it's a label, but it gives you a rather nice, interesting shape to start with. Okay, so we're up to windows. Now, how about we use the same stamp and we make a card where we want to just edge the label that we've done, because I wanted a white label on a white card, and that doesn't look very impressive. So I'm using the edging here, and all I've done is this. I've cut out a coloured label and a plain white label. The white one is going to be the one for the stamp set. And then I'm going to position these just underneath so that it looks like they're a little shadow. Okay, just like that. Now I've got a little tiny gap there and a little tiny gap there, and what I've done is I've just placed the ribbon and a little sprig across, so it looks like it goes right round the whole label, but of course it can't, because it's not, we can't make it bigger than the original. So how about that? The other thing to do for that is to actually just almost give it a shadow above. So this time, instead of splitting it, I've just done one, and then I've done a red one behind. So it's very, very subtle on this, but it just takes away from the stripes and it gives a subtle edge. Okay, so shadows and edging. What about extending your pictures and patterns? Now I'm using just this label because it's just one I can use, but you can do this with all kinds of things. You can split the body of the cat so you get the head popping out the top and the tail at the bottom, things like that. So use your imagination, but this time I've just taken the image and then I've split this in half, and I've just let this peek out from underneath, and it looks as if this goes all the way. So we've created a false banner, and the same with this one. Okay, we've created a false banner across the back by just taking the ends. Okay, so we can make banners and extend things lengthways. Okay, what if we took the same label and we started to cut it up? And again, I'm using the label as an example here, but you could do this with all kinds of things. If you cut off the balloons top and bottom, you can make great vases. So here is an everyday label. Here it is, the everyday label. And I've just this time cut across here. So I've cut across here at this point. So I've now made two different labels. And then I've cut across here. So we've just got the roundy edge. I've now got three different labels, all using that one simple punch. So we're now making lots of different punches and lots of different labels from one punch. So when you buy one punch, look and see what else you can do with it, not just that one thing. Okay. Well, what about doing something similar? Ooh, excuse me, just leaning across for a moment. There we go. What about doing something similar, but this time, so I've started with this punch here, this punched out label, and I've got a happy birthday using exactly that one. Then I've cut across here where the dotted lines are, and I've now got a flat, rather different shape, rectangular label. And then I've got a huge long one. Okay, so how did I make it grow? It's all very well, I can understand how you can cut it down, but how did I make it grow? Well, this is how. Right, hold it tight, open it up. Ooh, a little bit fell out. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to feed it in, but I'm not going to let it go all the way, because that way I'm going to get a cut there and a cut there. So I'm going to feed it in part way, and I'm then going to put my finger in, and I'm just going to make it come up. So it's not feeding through that side at all. So I'm just going to feed through this side. So there's my one cut. Let me just get it level and nicely even. There we go. Okay, so that's one end. Now I could use that as a nice little bookmark, or if I wanted a flat end and a different shaped end, or I can put it back in again. Let's just get the little piece out of the way. I can put it back in again. Which way? That way. And I can flick this one up, and I can go for another cut on this end. Let me just get it rowed up. And you can see how important that bite point is, because it just allows me to wiggle it about until I've got it right. There we are. And now I have a nice, lovely, long banner, just like this one. So now I've shown you, not only can we shorten it and make it wider, make it fatter, we can now make it even longer. Okay, what else can we do with them? Well, we can make some wonderful things by combining punches. So I'm just going to show you, how to make some really nice little tab tops. So the first thing I've done is I have cut using, which one was it? The Everyday Label Punch. I punched it out and then I cut it in half so I could actually make 2 labels out of each one. And then what I'm going to do is what I've just done with the other. I'm going to cut it with a semicircle. Now, here's where I'm going to have a few problems because this is too small for me to hold and to get in. So here's where we get clever. And this is where you get clever if you want to punch something out of a small scrap and you just can't get hold of the edge. So take a post-it note and just attach a post-it note to the edge. So I'll just do that a little bit slower. Here's the sticky edge of the post-it note. I'm just going to put this onto it. I'm going to fold that over. And what I've done is I've now made a little handle. So I can now thread this in. And I want to look for where I want that little circly bit to go. I want there. So I'm going to punch it. Now it doesn't matter that the this is on top of here because remember it's only a post-it note, so it'll peel off easy as could be. And there you are, a really nice little tag top for your pages. So when you go to gillyhunt.com and ask me for the new catalogue, which came out in June, so around about when this video is coming out, get hold of me, ask me for a new catalogue, become one of my customers, and you'll be able to make lovely tabs to show where everything is in the catalogue. Okay? So the next thing we're going to have a go at, so I don't know what number I'm up to. I'm up to 15 apparently, looking at my list, is labels that are layered up or images that are layered up. So when you're using your punches, don't forget you can use lots and lots of different punches to make lots of layers, and you can make lovely toppers and lovely decorative pieces. I'm going to put this round a piece of chocolate, a nice bar of chocolate, give it to someone which says it's your day. Wouldn't that be nice? So think about layering them up, and remember we can now shorten them, we can lengthen them, we know how to. So that's what we can do with our labels. And thank you so much to a lovely French demonstrator who gave me this beautiful selection. I had to share it with you, even though they're rather out of date images. She made it for one of our swaps at one of our conventions, and I'm really sorry to her, but I have lost her name tag that was on it, so I can't give you her name, but if she ever sees this video and wants to give me her name, I will put it on as a note for everybody to see, because isn't that beautiful? So this is mine, these were hers. Okay, and the next one is we now have to look to see that we have different types of punches too, because up until now we've just been using the plain old flat ones. So this one creates, and there are some, there's a really lovely multi-tag one in the new catalogue, so look out for that coming. This one, all I have to do is cut a piece of card to fit in this end. Oh, and I've cut it a bit. Oh no, it will fit just. Let me just give it a tiny, tiny little slither off the end. If I could find my guillotine. Here it is. I'm just going to slither a tiny bit off the end because that's a bit tight. There we go. Okay, now then you need 2 inches for this particular one, but different tags have different entries. That's better. So I'm going to push this in, and it's going on the flatbed, and as soon as I can feel it getting to the top, I'm going to do this, and I now have a perfect tag top. Show you again, let's do the bottom as well. Push it in all the way to the end. I can feel that it's totally in because I feel it's stopped. Clink clonk, and I now have a beautiful tag end. And I think what I'll do is I'll just show you some lovely, lovely, lovely samples that in lots of different styles, just to show you, you know, put two together and a little heart. They're long, they're short, because we're cutting only the top, we can make these as long or as short as we like. Little tiny ones, simple ones. There you go, there's just a selection, and suddenly with one simple punch we can create a whole load of different images, all in different styles and lots of different sizes and lengths. How fabulous to have a tab fest. Buy one between you and your mates, or get one each, even better, but buy one between you and all make a whole load of tabs. Great for Christmas. What about a corner punch? This is a corner punch, and I'm going to show you a couple of samples. Here we go. And I've got to just find my, oh, here it is. Sorry, I've dropped it on the floor. My little sample piece of, oh, it's a bit mucky now, never mind. I'm just going to show you what it does. This actually does 3 different images. So if I push it in at this corner, it goes in so far and then stops, and that will now produce the most lovely rounded corner. Okay, but if I want a slightly different corner, how about creating a pretty corner like this? Now I can do a rounded corner and then put pretties in, like I have on the top of this little box, or I can leave it as a right angle. And then the other side produces, I put it in, and it produces a lovely little oval hole, which is fabulous for little tags, tops, and also if you want to do little tops of things like this. How neat and lovely is that? That allows me to put this little wrap around my lolly stick. So there's the little holes it creates. So these are also worth looking out for in the catalogue, because these can make 101 other things. Okay, so whoosh those out of the way. Oh, did you notice, I should have just pointed out, that when I cut these out, I then used them to make the actual flowers. So I've used the cutouts as well. So that's another thing you can do with punch. Though there's a free one that's not one of the 20. So I think that makes it 21 now. Okay, what about creating different mechanisms? So what about this? Here it will, that is a little cutout with a punch. And here is another punched image, and by putting the one next to the other, we can flip them through, and that's now closed. And I can't claim to have made this, because again, this was a lovely swap with a girl from Germany. And likewise, there is no name on it. I don't think this one ever did have a name. The French girl did leave me her name and I lost it, I'm afraid. So here we go. In it goes. Flicks open. So have a think about using some of the long thin stamps, and we have a particularly nice one, which is a really long thin one. Here it is, I'm trying to find it. Here we go. Which is well worth using for this sort of mechanism. Okay, so think of mechanisms. How far have we got? Oh, I think we have 2 more to go. Phew. So we're up to number 19. And that is to think carefully about changing the colour, changing the image. So here is what was stamped out in a green piece of card, and because we used green, that instantly looks like 3 leaves on a stalk. So here's our leaves on a stalk. But as soon as we punch these out in pink, they become the large petals for this little flower. They become the smaller, middle-sized petals for this flower. And then I use this from another set altogether. But just by changing the colour of what you're punching can change the image that you want to create. So look at what you've got and don't think, oh, well, that's just a leaf punch. Think, oh, that's a leaf punch. And in another colour, it could be a petal punch. In another colour, it could be rabbit ears. Those would make great ears for a rabbit, wouldn't they? Just that one there. Not in green, but in another colour. So have a think about what you might change your stamps into, your punches into. And the last one, number 20, I'm going to just call it punch art, because I just want to show you what can be done when you've got your imagination going mad. You've got loads of pieces of scrap paper, and I would urge you like mad to do this. Grab a piece of scrap paper and just stamp and stamp, punch and punch and punch and punch and punch a whole load of shapes when you get something, and see what you can do with it, because these are all made using this one butterfly punch. So here's the butterflies. Now we can cut with snips, or in fact we can pop it in. So let's just use the cat one. Okay, so let's just put the right angled corner into here, and I've got it just across that corner, the top corner. And out comes another bat. How good is that? That's a bit of fun, isn't it? Okay, using the same punch as this, I've made a bow tie by punching it one way, then turning the image round, using the post-it note to hold on to it, because it becomes so, like we've done with this, we've just put the post-it note on to make the little handle, turn it round and take it through the punch the opposite way, and we've got a bow tie. What about making a crab using the little edges, the frilly edges of the butterfly? What about taking the top wings off the butterfly and the top wings off this butterfly and making ourselves a lily on a lily pad? Tulips. I don't know what that is, an orchid maybe? But I'm sure you and your imagination could go absolutely mad. And I'm going to challenge you a little bit. If you feel like it, please come to gillyhunt.com, grab my email address and send me some images of what you punch. And then maybe I can feature them on another of my videos at another stage. So there you go, 20 ideas what to do with punches. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to finding you again with Q for, let's call it a question for now, a question mark. Come back and find out what Q is for. Thanks then, bye-bye.